To diversify assessment is one of the great challenges of teaching. To not rely, and especially in science teaching, to not rely on only the quiz at the end of the term, or things that would cause you to teach to the test. In a knowledge building classroom, you have wonderful opportunities to assess student learning. There are, knowledge forums, so the use of technology, and specifically knowledge forum, is a wonderful tool to assess student learning. And it's done in ways that are built into the knowledge building, into the technology itself. Things like how many build-ons do children do? How many actual notes do they write? Are they actually responding to other people's ideas? Like all of this is factored into the knowledge forum as a way that you can see as a teacher who might be not part of a conversation. And then when you're in a knowledge building circle, you're also listening. Who is speaking, who isn't speaking, and how can I support the children maybe who aren't speaking. Let me just describe an old school way of assessing. So if you just imagine, a piece of paper, and it's divided into the size of square sticky notes, and each of those squares has the student's name on it. So I have about 3 pieces of legal size paper with the student's name, and each time that we're doing inquiry or doing science, I'm taking little notes on what students have done, and at the end of the week, that whole chart should be filled. If by chance I notice that there are a couple of children who I've not been able to make any notes on, that's a fault of mine. That means I have let 2 of my students slip through the cracks that week, and I don't know what they've been learning in science. And so sometimes it could be just listening to their conversations together. It might be that I work with one of the research groups and really find out what are their experimental designs. Let me see what you've got in the lab books. I'm not making red notes in their lab books. I've already told them that those are their notes. But I look at that. I look on the knowledge forum and see how many notes that they've made and how many build-ons they've done. Sometimes we'll have students draw a diagram to show me what you've learned so far. When I was talking earlier about the creation of the documentary, when I look at the students' scripts for that documentary and look, okay, I can assess their scientific understanding of, so I look in the grade 4 curriculum and I look at science, habitat, understanding. I look through the curriculum expectations. I can find things there. I can also find that in their language arts, the expectations for them at this grade level. Are they forming sentences? Are they able to form themes? Are they able to express ideas? Are they communicating their ideas well using the structures of our language? Often in our science teaching in a knowledge building classroom, we draw on authoritative sources, authoritative texts. So this is language that's above the level of grade 4, grade 5, and 6. And I remember when we were studying the evolution of animals on islands, this was in a grade 5, 6 class, the children were moving forward so quickly that I realized I had to find articles written by Darwin and Lamarck. They were having arguments about evolutionary points of view, and so we had this class debate, and the students took home this and also read it in class, but also took home either Darwin's argument or Lamarck's argument, and then we met in class. And I'll still remember some of the notes that were on knowledge forum after this debate. It was one of the students said, Darwin and this other guy were having an argument, and one thought that giraffes that ate the leaves on the trees, just the reason that long neck giraffes survived was because they stretched their necks further. And then he was saying, but Darwin believed that they survived because they were taller, like there were some long-necked giraffes to begin with, and they were able to survive. Anyway, this was this wonderful debate, and so the use of authoritative sources were another piece of both the assessment and the moving the knowledge forward. Knowledge Forum has a piece on it that's about that's called A Rise Above, and so it's about moving above what the knowledge is there and trying to summarize it, categorize it, and so the children, because of this piece on Knowledge Forum, and they were able to do it with technology, They then use that in a knowledge building discourse, and so that they would actually say, I think we need to rise above. We've been hearing like lots of same level learning, but let's rise above and see if we can move forward. So this is the way that the technology actually infuses into our language, comes into the language of the children, and it actually helps become thinking tools and changes the way they have discourses.